to make Saturday, and will be willing to speak on Saturday. There's been some chat about this on the WhatsApp group to try and arrange a session on Saturday with the with Basilevs. Do we want to say a little bit about that? How far we got with planning that?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Saturday, it was brought up last week or the week before, I think. Just as an awful lot of our participants now who were getting ready to start putting down their editing on the Screenlife editing for the proof of concept. So the conversation started with us thinking about showing and telling on a Saturday, which is great, and we can do that. However, the conversation I had with Maria last night was that our editor couldn't make it tonight, so they're going to come on Saturday instead. So it actually fits in with some plans that an awful lot of us have already had, but so they will be coming, but it'll be next Saturday. Outside of that, tonight wasn't for editing, it was for directing of Screenlife, and so Nick is going to start us off tonight with a directing for Screenlife presentation, and then we're going to have some editing after the break with you, Martin, right?
Yeah, after the break I'm going to talk a little bit about editing in general, the concept of editing, and how it might work in Screenlife, both differently from a traditional format and in many ways drawing on all the skills that you may already have as an editor in more traditional formats as well. So I'll speak a little bit about that after the break, and then we'll also have time in our breakout sessions to catch up with where we are on our proofs of concepts, and then we'll work out how to organise Saturday session with the masterclass from Basilevs as well. Hopefully everyone will be able to make that. If you're not able to make it on Saturday, and I appreciate totally that people will have commitments on a Saturday, we will of course record it, and it will be available as soon as possible. Okay, so let's begin this evening with Nick. You're going to talk about
directing. Hello. 1 second, I'm just going to share my screen. Bear with me. If it lets me. Is it sharing? Oh. 1 second, sorry about this. There we go. Can you see that now? Fab. Perfect. Perfect. So, hello everyone. So today I thought it'd be worth going through the preparing to direct your POCs. We might cover some cinematography elements, and kind of mostly this is applicable to the proof of concept stage rather than the feature length filming and directing of a Screenlife film, as the kind of two different experiences with different budgets. And hopefully someone who's worked in that arena with features might be more qualified than that, but this is my experience with looking at proof of concepts. So this is also kind of catered to the COVID-19 kind of life that we're in, and how we can direct externally and direct with actors and get our kits to them. But the difficulty is there's a benefit of COVID in that there's no crews. But then the downside of COVID is that there are no crews. There's it kind of two-sided coin there, where some things are easier and some things are difficult. So let's dive into it. So what I thought to give you an example of here is something we've been using here with the Screenlife team is EPOCam. And it's basically a way of tricking your computer's webcam into having your iPhone as its camera. So you have an app on your iPhone called EPOCam, and then you have an installation on your computer. You match the two together, and basically your phone becomes an external webcam, which you can either have as a USB connection, a Wi-Fi connection, and it's about $7.99, so it's quite cost effective. But why would you do this? Well, I think the webcams typically, say if it was on a Mac or a Windows, the built-in ones are quite poor quality. Whereas a lot of people do have iPhones and Androids that could install EPOCam and really enhance the quality. So you can control focus on this, you can have a wider color range, and the quality is far better. So as I say, you can use Wi-Fi, USB or NDI, but I definitely recommend USB for the best quality. I'd also say just even using a phone, I think quality in proportion to cost, an iPhone's camera tends to be better than a lot of these webcams you can buy for 150 quid, 60 quid online. So it's definitely a really good option, as I'll show in a second, some of the things you can do with it. But I think I'm right in saying that myself, Joanne, and a lot of the other team are all using EPOCam at the moment. So it is a really good app and it's really easy to set up. It's not just Apple products. You can use it on Windows. You can use it on other types of phones. But yeah, let's dive into that. So here's some examples of what you can do with an EPOCam that you can't necessarily do. I've just done these earlier. You can zoom in with optical or digital zoom. You can go ultra wide or a standard wide, and you just can't do these things with a standard webcam. You can flip the back facing or front facing camera. You can have flash on consistently. There's a lot of capabilities there. And if you really need to go to that ultra wide lens to capture an entire room, it's got that feasibility to trick your camera into having the capability to do that, which really is really key to be able to do it. And you can't even do it in Zoom on iPhone. So yeah, that's a really good option to use. Another one we can use, I'm sure a lot of us have GoPro cameras at home. It might depend which generation you have, but you can connect your GoPro camera as a webcam too. If you've got an older generation, you have to buy like a HDMI, a USB to HDMI, a mini HDMI. It's a bit fussy. But on a new generation, you can actually have it as a wireless webcam. So it's a really good option. You know, the quality can be about 4K. So you've got loads of capabilities there. It's just being wary of making that GoPro look like an iPhone or a webcam rather than it looking ultra high quality. So whether you do that in post or you choose a different lens within the settings, it's worth considering and studying what frame rates that device might have. So it requires a little bit of research into that. Now, if you are using it in Zoom, just in case you've never used it before, very easy to just change it to EPOCam or GoPro just by selecting the arrow up on the camera settings. Now, you could use a mid-range or industry camera, you know, industry standard camera. There is the possibility, you know, you could use that and then downgrade it, but it isn't necessarily needed. You could use a DSLR, you could use whatever. But I think for proof of concepts, I'd avoid this personally, unless it absolutely calls for it. Now, you could also use a standard webcam. You might have one at home or you might want to purchase one. But again, bear in mind, these cameras have different frame rates, the distortions and moire, even the motion blur have a different feel to that of an iPhone if you wanted to trick it into feeling like that, or a standard Mac or Windows camera. So it's worth considering that, but there's some great options out there, but some of them can be quite expensive. Another one that's kind of come up, which I'm sure a lot of you are aware of, is Portal. I've not seen it used in Screenlife, but this is an interesting thing you could use if you're wanting to move the camera or move the direction of the audience's eyes with a character moving without them having to physically move the camera. This is just something that might interest some of you if it suits your story. But Portal's a really interesting thing because the camera can track the character, as you can see here. Now, there is an option to have multiple cameras for your character. Now, it depends on, does it suit the character? Is it in their personality trait to have this kind of technological experience? But for instance, I could move my camera here and have that there. And if it allows me to while I'm moving, if it does, I can switch between that. If you see my camera, it might take a second. I can switch between multiple angles. So if your character is a live streamer, for instance, it might be a really interesting way of doing things. Just another option there, and it's character dependent. Now, eyeline. It's worth considering this because it can get left behind now. For instance, I'm looking down here rather than looking in your soul up here. So when directing your actors, it's worth directing where that camera is going to go and making sure they're aware of what's going on screen. Maybe you move the camera to directly at the center of the actual screen they're looking at. Just play around with that and make sure that you've got that eye line perfect. Now, there's one clever trick that Apple have been doing with AI, where you can trick your iPhone into changing the eye line of yourself to look like you're looking at the camera. As you can see here with the gentleman on the left, he's looking in the same place there in both shots, but with camera AI contact turned off and on. You could also do this in post or what have you, but it's a really interesting experiment to do. And I'm sure some of you will be already aware of this. This is my setup. I'm going to run you through some of the options that you could use just as a basic DIY setup that could be potentially cost effective. As you can see there, I've got my cheap, just standard table lamp and a microphone and what have you. But I'll walk you through this now. So if you're using a phone to record, I would use something like this gooseneck. Now I'm using that right now, and it basically means I can perfect the shot and get in any angle I want. I can really get that finite version of what I need, rather than a standard tripod. The only issue is sometimes it can be a bit shaky. For instance, if I go like that on my table, it isn't the most easy to use in it being stable. But that's one option, and there's loads of others. I've got these little, I don't know if you can see this, these little ones as well. Loads of different options you can use with your actors that are cost effective. Now, in terms of audio, you don't really need to go mega expensive. You may already have this kind of gear at home. For instance, you could get a Yeti, or you could get one like I've got here where it's like a boom and then just hide it out of shot. You could use a standard Rode mic, or for a proof of concept, it may be that it works just using your iPhone's audio system. iPhones and phones tend to have a better microphone than, say, a computer, typically. So you could use that, and it might be more realistic too. Just being aware as well of the sound of the keyboard. If your actor's pretending to type, make sure that you give them the note to pretend without loads of noise if you wanted to put that in post. And if they're moving this way, then obviously you're going to lose the voice. So just make sure you give the actors those tips before they start, so that you're not left with loads of issues in post and having to re-record and do ADR. Again, if you're in Zoom and you wanted to change that, all you need to do is go to the camera up option and choose which sound version you want. So I'm using Q91. In terms of lighting, you could really go with anything. You can make it makeshift. Ring lights tend to be really cost effective and easy to use. They can be USB, and they're not really, fire hazards like the red lights. Like, I'm sure a lot of you have these red headlights at home for your shoots that you've been doing in the past potentially. But these ring lights are really easy to kind of plot around. You could have a 3-point lighting set up, and you can change the color and everything like that. It's difficult sometimes because natural light is more unpredictable. So it may be that it works better when directing your actors to block all of the light out of the room from the start of the day to the end of the day, and just have a consistent lighting setup that they can consistently use. So if it gets to 5 o'clock and losing sunlight, then at least you keep going. Now, let's have a look at these two options. So just to show you me playing with light here, very random video, but you can see here, you can just play with anything with these ring lights. And it does take a while to perfect, but if you can direct your actor to play with that during a COVID-19 setting, and just experiment with different lights they have around the house, or importing one to them from Amazon, for instance, you can really get a really nice shot. Or you can make a makeshift DIY one where the light goes specifically around the computer, as they've done in searching. I've not known how to do this, but if anyone else does, give us a shout. But yeah, you could make it more makeshift than it being perfect and buying lots of gear. Don't forget practicals. Now, here, as you can see, the image is in far better by having these lights in the background that look natural and feel great to the room. So you could just buy a couple of lights or ask the actor that you've got to show everything they've got in the house, and you can reposition things. It just adds depth. Oh, is there a question there? Sorry. Is there somebody in chat? Oh, thanks, Chris. Sorry, I can't see raised hands and questions in the chat on here. In terms of recorders, you can use things like OBS, Filmage Screen, and APowerSoft. I've been using Filmage Screen because it's got the capability of doing 4K even on kind of a smaller part of the screen. And you can change the frame rate and everything else like that. Now, if you're working on a Mac, it's worth being aware that you will have to download an external software or a plugin that will enable you to record the audio from inside your computer. So it might be called, for instance, here it's called Black Hole 16 channels. So if you can buy any of these, or OBS is free, and I think APowerSoft is free, you can just start experimenting and getting those images in high quality. Now, if you're working with an actor and they've got okay Wi-Fi, it's not the best, and you're losing a bit of quality, it may be worth putting a little bit of room in your budget for paying for them to have a a bolt-on or a 4G cellular data connection. Paying for them to have an extra 5 gigs or 4 gigs. It just means that you can keep that quality there, or you could even use an Ethernet cable. But obviously, these are challenges that we face during COVID-19, where we can't control as many variables, but that might be something to consider. If you're working on a Mac again, make sure you turn off Don't Disturb and plug in your laptop. It'll be a bit different on Windows, but just easy things that you could forget when you get to the day. One thing that's definitely worth doing, and you've got guaranteed quality then, you've not got any glitches or Wi-Fi issues, is to ask your actor or actress to position a camera very close to the one they've already got with another device. So for instance, if you've got an old iPhone and you've switched to a new generation, you've still kept hold of it, use that as another camera there. So I've got one here that I could film myself with right next to where I've got this camera here, and then just go on video mode, record it, and at least if anything happens on the video, any bad quality, you've got a backup. I understand that's not necessarily always a cost-effective option if you don't have those things, but it's definitely worth considering if you can. And when it comes to casting, I definitely audition your actors over Zoom. Now, obviously, that we're going to have to do that during COVID. But even if we weren't, I think this is a really beneficial thing to do. Get them into this setting, understand what they think Screenlife is, understand their preconceptions, their beliefs, see how they could operate a camera. Where do they position themselves? How do they use the internet? Theatre actors are particularly good, I think, for Screenlife because they're used to that real-time play and real-time action rather than stop and start, unless your story is a stop and start and it's not like Unfriended or Searching where it feels like real-time. So get on a Zoom with some actors and test the atmosphere and see what works. So here are a couple of tips and ideas for working with actors. The first thing I do once you've cast the actor is ask them to show you around their home, basically, which rooms they're comfortable with you shooting in. They might position themselves automatically and think this is the perfect space, but once you've kind of gone through their home and seen the different lighting and the different locations they've got, you'll find potentially a better option than they considered because they're so used to it. Then it may be worth, when you're actually recording, to share the script on the screen and have someone whose particular job is to almost use the screen share option on Zoom as a teleprompter. So if they forget the line, they can always just look directly at the screen. while you're directing them, now I haven't done this yet, but it might be a cool idea. I'm sure we can ask Nick and a few of the actors in the group what they think of this. But the idea of you could potentially message an actor in a live performance, make sure they've got it on mute, and you can communicate with your actor live. This is one option you could do. Whether that could take them out is another question, but it could be speed up, slow down, you know, those kind of directions that are quite concise without having to call cut and start again. When you are filming, don't jump in every 2 seconds, try and allow it to flow, make note, and then go back and do pickups. Also consider, make sure that you direct the camera and the movement, if there is any movement. Allow the actor to have some full free reign with when it comes to that, but kind of keep a consistency with what you need and what that means. If it looks really shaky, does that keep in touch with what your vision should be? And also one thing you could do, if the actor's finding it difficult to visualize it, say if they're just looking at other actors when ultimately they should be seeing their mouse move from here to here and going on Google, walk the actors through every action potentially through a keynote like I'm doing now. You could literally have a keynote while the actor's acting, showing them each slide or movement of action. This could be one way of doing it, to make sure that they get to see what you're envisioning in your head live while they're performing. And that's it really. POCs are really just a place to test and rehearse ourselves ready for features. You know, we're not the final product yet as directors when we're directing POCs, and it gives us that chance to make mistakes and learn how to direct actors and crew during the while exploring this format. So yeah, if there's any questions, let's explore those, and thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Thank you very much, Nick. That was very helpful, very technical, very interesting. We've got some questions for Nick.
Yeah, Nick, I'm guessing you presented that like as a budget option to people who haven't got the gear. What if you've got all the gear and no idea? You're talking about resolving the resolution down to something more manageable. If you're shooting it on a 35mm cam with a nice bit of glass, what would you recommend doing in post to make it look like a webcam?
I think you'd have to play with distortion a little bit. It depends on the lens that you're using. You'd probably have to do some camera tests as a side-by-side with a phone and whatever camera you're using, and then match what the moire looks like, what the motion blur looks like. And then I think there's a preset. I'm using DaVinci at the moment, but there's some presets in DaVinci where you can pixelate or depixelate or desaturate to make an image look more mobile phony. I'll have a look into that, and then
it's a little bit washed out, isn't it, on a mobile? The thing that concerns me about using a mobile is if you do want to do anything in post, the bit depth just falls apart on you.
Yeah, there's not as much range as there in color, and yeah, I think there's lots of different options there. Don't know about the technical side of how you could convert that though, but at least if you've got that range, it's easier to bring it down.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure you wouldn't hate it if it was nice.
I'd ask Joanne about that.
I think that just going back to what Madge was saying to us a couple of weeks ago, it's best to do it with good tech. So with everything that you've just said, Carl, it's best to do it at its best, and then to downgrade. So use your nice glass, if you have it. One thing that I would like to say about the proof of concept though, which is just a little point that I'd like to make. It's the proof of concept is about proving that your concept actually works within the format. It's not. I would actually go for the nice stuff if you've got it. you know, I just think it's best to do best and then downgrade, because you can always bring it back up again. But the point of the proof of concept is about proving that this concept works as a Screenlife production and as a film, as a concept. So
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I think it's difficult because if you go into cinema screens, you'd have the DCP, you'd have all the. Whereas if it's just a proof of concept, there's not as much concern about the exhibition side so early on as well.
Nick,
Yeah.
Colin, I'm just going to jump in. Beginning of last year, did a virtual short with Screenlife, Screenwriters London conference, and it was Mike Spence I worked with, who's a tutor at a film in London, and he suggested using VidLeap on the phone. And he said it's not the most glamorous of editors, but for when you want to drop the tone of a high-end camera, because he was using a Blackmagic and he dropped the quality down so it looked like distorted images, things like that, and it worked really well.
Yeah. I mean, my initial thought was shoot it really well, and then just lash it through compressor on a real rude setting that would match an iPhone.
yeah.
You know, it's just I wouldn't like to go through the pain of setting it up cheap and cheerful for the proof of concept and then go through the learning experience again to shoot it well. Might as well do it all at the same time. That was just, but that's only for me though, you know.
No, I think I stand by it. If you've got it, do it. You know, if you've got it. I mean, I think where Nick was coming from there is, if it's, you know, you don't need to spend your budget on going and having really nice stuff, but if you've got it, definitely use it and do what you've just said there. You know.
But you could go, like, example, Cannibal Holocaust, where the scene that everyone thought was the impaling was real. They actually shot Ruggero Deserto, shot it on 70mm, dropped its rate, scratched the film, then reprocessed it on 35mm, and it actually looked like it was real. But actually, it wasn't. It had been high quality 70mm originally.
I think the biggest variable at the moment though is COVID, and obviously if you're not on the same set as your actor to operate a high-end camera, it might be a far stretch to ask your actor to operate a high-end camera rather than a phone that they used to, you know. So that does.
Well, what Nick said about theatre is good, because a lot of them do have, because the short I worked on towards the end of last year, Queenie, the actress, was in the theatre group in London, but she had the right sort of equipment because she had to do her scene remote, because it was on screen, and it came out really well. But she knew what to do.
A lot of actors are familiar with doing self-tapes anyway, aren't they? It's only a glorified version of that.
So, yeah, absolutely.
Can I ask a question about this app that you mentioned, Nick?
Of course.
The Appl.
Yeah.
What I've noticed while I've been kind of going through sort of a few tech rehearsals recently is that the iPhone, when you switch the camera from the rear to the front, then the quality drops. So, you know, the rear camera, you can get your you know, sort of 4K, but
Yeah.
on the front camera, it's only giving you HD or less. And I'm just wondering, when you're using that app, if you flip the camera, does it retain the 4K quality when it records?
So what I've done is I can't see myself right now. In terms of, I can't see my phone screen. My phone's got the back camera on.
Right.
So I'll show you the difference if you want. Bear with me 1 second. So if I flip this way, that's the front-facing camera.
Yeah, it doesn't retain the quality. Okay.
So you can see the difference there, but I can still zoom and do all that stuff.
Yeah.
I'll switch to the back one, but I just use the back-facing camera. It's just much better quality and more capability. I can still, you know, if I go in that close, you can still see. Sorry, everyone, that's a horrible Leone shot there, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it won't retain it being 4K to the Zoom call. I think it'll be about it'll still probably be 1080p rather than 4K. That's why the secondary camera would come in handy, I think, is having that other phone next to that recording in 4K. So you've got the option for both then.
Have you had the experience, Nick, of using that Appl cam and it dropping the signal and
Never.
flipping back onto your computer's inbuilt camera?
I have.
Have you?
Yeah, remember, Martin, we were in a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and my computer just went nuts. It was the Epo cam, and actually what's happened since then is I can't get the sound back on the Teams, which is boss, because I can just say I can't use Teams, but but actually, yeah, it did cause loads of problems.
Oh, bugger. I've not had any problems with it, but I've not used Teams. I've only been using it for Zoom, so I've not experienced any issues.
It was actually because of the power supply. It was very low on the battery, and it just went nuts. And then I had to turn everything off and then start again. But it's only been once, and I think it was the power supply. So just make sure that it's plugged into the mains.
Yeah,
I would second that. I've used EpoCam for DJ live streaming, and when I've had it on the Wi-Fi mode, there's a visual lag, so the audio's there, but the visuals, like, gradually it went from 1 minute behind, 5 minutes behind, 8 minutes behind, which was bonkers. So always keep it in USB mode.
Yeah,
to Prince.
Absolutely. Yeah, USB definitely. Absolutely.
With a suggestion there from Jack. Jack,
oh, this is about OBS Ninja. For anyone who wants to use an either cheap an option to the app in the PowerPoint, if you can wrap your head around OBS on your computer, there's a website called OBS Ninja, where you can connect your phone camera to the OBS software and use that as a video input for your film. Totally free and high quality. Great. That's really good. I've been using Filmage Pro for I can screen record my phone on that, but I think it costs 30 quid or something like that for that app. So OBS is great. Anything else? No.
The one you mentioned about having a ring light there, that's one of the few things that annoys me about Screenlife when I get all picky about it, because I see the catch light in their eyes and I think that's not real. Come on.
Absolutely. I mean, you could, for instance, if you had a few, if I move this over, you can still create, I know what you mean. You don't have to use a ring light. I think it's just for cost really that we've been using it. But I do completely agree. You don't want it to, not everyone would have a ring light around the computer.
I think for me with the whole thing around lighting and stuff like that, Cole, it's down to the that's the creative process, isn't it? It's down to the director. Preferably for me, I'd sooner have the diffused stuff around me computer. That's probably the best way, even though that ring light, I know what you mean, because there's the ring light there. Look, I look like Elton John. It's really, really irritating as well to work with it. But the diffused light around the outside of the laptop is probably the best way. And it's dead simple, actually. It's one of them strip lights that you put, the diffused paper over and just clip it. And again, like, this is something that is it's innovative. Whoever comes up with the best way it's the best way, isn't it? It is a case of trial and error and actually getting it just right. I think one of the things that I took from Madge's presentation was that absolutely 100% use the top range gear if you can. Not if you can, you know, if it went into a proper production, you wouldn't be using EpoCam and you wouldn't be using ring lights. You'd be in a studio. But what another thing that I have to say is it's, you know, an awful lot of the work that's been done by Basilevs over the last year has been done remotely. So you actually can, and it's not a case of asking your actor to put their phone on. You send them the equipment that needs to, that they're going to be using, and then you use it. And there's also, I mean, there's a fair few creatives in the room who've got different, you know, different ways of doing things. I'm just thinking about Ryan and what he does with, you know, with his work, and then using interfacing and using a whole load of other things. This is where we are today. It's like the most basic of equipment, the most basic way of trying to make something that is usable to sell your concept. Because Nick and I have been working for a long time now on trying to move a really brilliant idea forward, but we won't move it forward until we've got the trailer, until we've got the proof of concept. We need to prove that things work, and then people are more likely to invest in your ideas and in your concepts.
Very good.
Question.
I was just going to quickly jump in and just say that strip lights, you know, the kitchen counter strip lights, they work really well. And you can get them for about £14, whole long length of them. They clip together, and the brightness of them, you can diffuse them, change colour, all sorts of things, but they give a better effect than, say, a ring light.
Yeah, absolutely. But Sophie's just asked a question there about the DOP. Nick, do you wanna talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for a proof of concept, it depends if you are Are you thinking of hiring a DOP for this, Sophie?
Not sort of especially, but I'm just not super up on the technical side of things myself. So I was thinking that it would be useful to have somebody who knew about the stuff, but I'm not sure how this sort of dynamic works and what is expected of them, or just what's your experience of it?
I think, well, until I've done a feature film with in the format, I wouldn't be too sure because I'm still in proof of concept stage. But my approach would be get someone on pretty early who is really technical, who can walk the actors through how to set up the lighting, how to set up, if this is in COVID times. If it wasn't in COVID times, you'd just have multiple units at different locations. You'd have a camera assistant at each person's house, or a technical director, or whatever the right term would be. But during COVID, I think it's good to have one person there that just knows all the technical, that can help walk them through it. So you can just focus on the creative rather than having to worry about the tech side. Sorry if that couldn't be more helpful with that, Sophie.
No, that's great. Thanks, Nick.
I think something else I'd like to point out as well is the crew with a Screenlife film. It's not as big as it was, but that's only because the equipment isn't as heavy. You know, it's not equipment heavy. So I think you still need to have the creatives in the room. You still need to have people thinking about dressing your set. You still need to have people thinking about, and as a director, how you're gonna compose your shots. You know, I'm sitting looking at your background there, so thinking, oh, that's nice, actually, composition of that's quite lovely. If we had do you know what I mean? So and another group that I've been working with, like thinking about the reflection shots, thinking about, you still have to think about all of these things, because of course you are making something that needs to be visually stimulating as well as and interesting. So you still need everything like before. However, it isn't as heavy. Yeah, and it's there's not as many people knocking around, but actually you do still need them creative roles.
Brill.
Do I say it, Nick? Do I speak a little bit about working with actors beyond getting them to set up the technical kit?
Absolutely. I think it's really mastering that art of, what's the right phrase, allowing them the room and the capability to just flow with it. Now, whether you get them to learn the lines off by heart, like theatre, or whether you get them to read the lines is another question. But I think if you get them to learn the lines and you can rehearse it like theatre, you can do it over and over, and you can build that energy. I think the core part of it is that there is no interruption there, that there is, you would literally have yourself and a script supervisor there making notes on performance where you might want to go and do pickup, but ultimately the fluidity is the actor just rolling with the emotions. It's a little bit like a one-shot film in a sense. I don't know if anyone's seen Victoria or is it Utoya? These one-shot films, if you treat it a little bit like that initially, if it's in a real-time narrative, I think your performances could be really quite spectacular because they're going through the character arc in the same way as the audience would view it, rather than this non-linear thing of, actors sometimes hate this thing of, right, well, now I'm filming the last scene on the first day, the first scene on they're not getting that sense of a full character arc. Whereas if you're shooting 3 days and you just do 3 takes, that could be one way of doing it. Or breaking it down by acts, then they're experiencing it in the same way as the character does. So I think researching how to work with actors in a theatre setting is probably the best way of learning how to direct actors in Screenlife.
Could I ask a question? Is that okay?
Yeah, go on, Nick. Yeah.
What are the tricks to cut into a take? Obviously, we know in Birdman and Victoria that there are tricks with swipes and all sorts of post effects to cut into the scenes, and we know that those takes weren't done in one a lot of the time. But in Screenlife, if we've got a video call, for example, what are the tricks to be able to cut into that?
So what I've done in the past is, I think it's, you find 2 frames where you're about to cut into the new take. So if you've got your long take here and you've got a slice that you want to get in, or you want to move forward in time, I think you take 2 frames from the end of there and then you duplicate them by about 5 seconds. You'd have to make it look like a glitch, essentially.
Yeah.
And then you take a frame from the beginning of the next clip and you pause that by 50% or however many frames. And then you get this sense of a glitch going between the 2.
Right.
So I think I'll work out what I did. I've done it before with like an interview where I needed it to feel fluid. And then I think I took 2 frames and then 1 frame from the beginning of the other.
Am I right? Thanks, Nick. That's really helpful. Yeah. Am I right in thinking that with the grammar of Screenlife, that if it was a call whereby, you know, we've got obviously, I'm assuming that if it was a Zoom call, for example, and the other person goes big in the picture because they're talking, isn't that a cutting point potentially?
Yeah, or even if you use an evolved Screenlife, move the camera to something else to hide the cut.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, just someone coming into screen or something else happening, or even moving a window over them to hide a cut could be another way of doing it.
Yeah.
And then just keeping the ambience of the sound underneath, or bringing the sound in underneath and then bring the visual in after a second later. That could be other ways of hiding it.
I think speaking from an actor's point of view and a director's point of view, I always try to relax the actors as much as possible, because I know how much relaxation is important for a performance as an actor. And, you know, to sort of put the pressure on someone to get it flawless in 1 take would be a lot of pressure. So I think if that would be your goal, but what you'd want to be doing in order to actually get that performance would be to try to get them to relax as much. So there's a bit of a contradiction really, because you'd be saying to them, look, it doesn't matter, we can cut around it, we can find ways to deal with it. But if you just treat it as a rehearsal in a theatre, because often in rehearsal rooms that's where the magic happens. Like, you know what I mean? When you get those goes at something and all of a sudden everyone's got goosebumps and it's just happened and it's amazing. But there's been no pressure, so that's enabled that performance.
Yeah, I think it's that room to fail, isn't it?
Yeah.
Allowing actors to know that if they fall flat on the face and they make a mistake, that it's not the end of the world. I think that's a really important point. No, I completely agree.
I think the advantage of this format though is that it is in of itself quite a kind of less pressurized environment for an actor. So I think they can be more playful and take risks and do interesting things in this format, because you know you're not on a set with big huge cameras in your face and lots of people in your eye line and all the rest of it. Like, you can probably be quite playful. I always find my self-tapes are better than the actual thing that I do in the end because you're more relaxed.
What's really interesting about this format as well is, you can get everything canned, and then when you're in the edit, there's a story about, I think it was Searching, one of the successful films anyway. Actually, it wasn't. It was Profile. One of the guys who was in it, they needed to do something with the sound, but of course everything was done and dusted, and they were all in different parts of the world, so they just sent the same. They sent the computer, the laptop that it was done with, and his shirt from wardrobe to, he was in Italy. I think he was supposed to be in Syria or somewhere like, but he was in Italy. Sent him the laptop and the shirt, and then they done the transition by just like pointing it at the ceiling and then coming back. It was a little bit like that. I mean, he was tanned. He was on holiday. But they just managed to do it through like color correction and everything, without having to do huge reshoots or anything like that. So I think what excites me more than anything about this format and where we are is just the ability to be relaxed enough to just make things up. Do you know what I mean? Composing, the vertical shot, or composing the reflective shot, all of these things. It's just given us a whole new space to work with. Do you know what I mean? As creatives, as directors, as actors, as everything. It's like we're in a new space, and actually coming up with the next best thing is what's driving me at the moment. I just think it's dead exciting.
I think if anyone's watched Dark Web, the Amaya character, who's deaf, there's a moment in there where I thought to myself, and when I watched it like third time, I started going, is that a green screen? Because she looks slightly different. I only spotted it because I was paused the frame, and then you look at the behind the scenes, and there was a shot of that actor with a green screen behind them. So it's clear that the filmmakers had to, obviously didn't have that location that she was in the house again, and had to go and do a pickup in front of a green screen.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's another thing they do as well, which is another tip and trick, is to make sure that you've recorded it with nothing. Make sure that you've recorded the background. Make sure that, me coming into shot and going out of shot is usable for exactly that. Because it is very, very post heavy what we're doing, isn't it? And I remember having a conversation with one of my friends who is the director of photography on, he's worked with Timor forever. And he just couldn't cope with it because he's a photographer. He loves doing his thing, with his photography. And of course, like his whole profession has changed. The profession has changed in film, and he's gone back to doing photography again. But after he's made his millions making films, he can do whatever he wants, can't he? So just stand around the beach with his camera.
I think it's good to get some cutaways as well, like typical films where you get a cutaway of something just in case if you need it. I think it may be helpful just getting the actor in different positions, or looking at different things, or eye lines in different places, because if you find yourself in the edit having to move a shot from where you thought it would be in the previs to down here, at least the actor has done that movement from there to there, and you've got that for the edit, and you can use different options. So I would definitely record loads of the actor just in doing lots of different random things, just in case if you need it.
I can't remember if there's been has there been jump cuts on stuff that on Screenlife, you know, like.
I can't think of any.
I'm just wondering if that might, you know, if it's part of a little montage when you get like, you know, a few little jumps in the. But I suppose it works when there's jumps in action and you've got that distinction between the physical aspects of it. So a jump cut on Screenlife, you know, there's nothing physical that's going to be different, just the dialogue. I suppose that's where the challenge is. But unless you were doing like what you just did then, where you might see them like doing this or whatever, or turning away, you might get a little bit of jump cutty stuff there. But
yeah, he did. Timur mentioned that in the first, or was it on the Saturday when we all met and had a conversation about, you know, the actual filming and directing of it. He talked about a number of putting in a number of glitches because of that, you know. So I don't think so. Nothing's coming to me mind, to be honest with you. But I'm gonna have another look.
There's definitely ones in the Tinder. This isn't an official Basilev's one, but the Tinder swipe night thing they made, the short film that Tinder made, where that jump cuts on scenes. So that's another way you could do it. I think
different costumes and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think Dead of Night might do it. I'm not too sure. I need to double check. But yeah, I think jump cuts could be a good way.
I think that's one of the things that, because we have got Sean Heighton coming next week. Just over the next couple of weeks, we've got Sean Heighton coming, we've got Adam Sidman coming, and we've got Carrie Williams coming. So Sean Heighton is the Dead of Night bloke, and Carrie Williams is the new, you know, the R&J or #J. So there's a number of it's evolved between one and the other. So we should put, and I'll ask them to include that within the presentation, Nick, next week.
Cool.
Yeah, and any others, just before we move away from that, any other questions about the technicalities of directing as well, because we will be doing another one with direction, but a couple of them, but just send me any questions and I'll ask them to include it in their presentations.
I mean, half of this stuff's just trying it out, isn't it? Seeing if it works, and trying it out.
So it's where all the fun is, isn't it? You know, I really like that bit. You know, trial and error and making things work. But actually, I think you might be right about the Snapchat one, Nick.
I think it's like being kids again, isn't it? It's a little bit like there's things that you can do. Like if you want to go and get a cutaway of someone filming, the director can just go and get the phone out and film it and then transfer it. And it's like, it's so yours then as a filmmaker too. There's this feeling of, there's not loads of crew, it's even more the small group who's made this film, it's very much theirs as well. So there's an intimacy to it, I think. And I think for actors, I think a few years ago we were talking about 35mm film and how that would change acting when actors had to move to digital technology. So, you know, they had longer to shoot, so it weren't stopping and reloading as the camera loader swapped out the cam. Now with Screenlife, you can kind of record all day and not cut once. You just, you know, you can keep going and reset when you need to, and then have those pauses and record it all. So it's really a really interesting new development, I think, for actors. But yeah, we probably could do with setting up a rule book for what's the best way of working with them, really.
Again, I think there's nothing better than working without a rule book.
Yeah. Is there anything else?
Just going to ask if anybody's been doing any acting during lockdown and done some recording on. Chris?
Well, it will be. It's partially remote, and it'll be partially on set in Liverpool. It's my character's demise in Metropolis that Peter Sincere is making his epic Liverpool gangland drama. I'm meeting my end, apparently, out of a taxi. So it should be quite entertaining. But I don't know what the remote bit is yet, what he wants me to do. I've got to find out yet.
All the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players.
Yeah. So Andrew, you've just mentioned the show must go online. That sounds very Screenlife like.
Yeah, it was great. It's a guy in down London who decided he wanted to put on a Shakespeare play on Zoom. They've done all the Shakespeare plays now. They finished them about a couple of months ago. But yeah, one play a week. And it started off, I just got involved in the first one, but they got some really great actors turned it into this massive event. Won loads of awards and stuff. So that was quite a lot of fun. But yeah, very Screenlife.
Wow, that's
very inventive of how to pass props, and talk to people. And, they started really pushing the format of how to do a play on Zoom. And I think the name is brilliant. The show must go online.
I mean, I just think that we're in such a, the possibilities are endless, aren't they? Because for the past couple of years, we've been talking about audiences dropping in cinemas, in theatres, in places, and I wonder if it's because because maybe we haven't really embraced new technologies and actually the expectation of the audience. And I think that's another place where we are now. The work that it appears to me, or working in this format and working around the fringes of it, especially around audience development. It's like audiences are expecting a lot more than what they normally would. Like Nick's film, Psychomachia, is an interactive Screenlife movie, very much a lean forward type of experience, and it's just dead interesting, isn't it? Because some, I think, the way that audiences respond to the work that we're doing is the key to its success, isn't it? So I mean, again, just reiterating, we're in just such an interesting space and an interesting time to do whatever we want.
Defo.
I'll just quickly jump in and say that with lockdown and everything else and the cinemas being closed, when there have been drive-ins or briefly open, I think it surprised a lot of exhibitors and film companies how many of the old films have actually been so successful. It's changed their perception, really, because like the original Jurassic Park went out in some countries in Asia, and it took another like $500,000. And it's sort of like all of a sudden they're thinking, oh, hang on a minute, people are wanting different things now, which is great for us because we're offering something so different. And it's the opportunities there.
I think cinema's going to revive itself after lockdown. I think there's going to be a bit of a reverse of into the physical world for a little bit. I think that'd be my approach. I think we'll go back into physical when it is safe. Don't know. Jenny's put a good point. Yeah, true. I think there's not been many films released at all this year, has there? That's the shame. And they've all been put onto Netflix.
Yeah, that's the indies that have been really doing so well at the moment. There's a lot of small production companies that have been making a lot of films during lockdown. A lot of people I'm in touch with and that have been doing stuff.
I'm there with Muzz as well. Muzz has just said nostalgia too. I mean, Ryan Gary posted something on LinkedIn yesterday, which was a really interesting read about how the old films are being remade, because audiences are really hungry for for things that they know, for things that it's a funny time, isn't it? And it's an exciting time, and it feels like we're at ground zero again. To be honest with you, it's like what there's an opportunity to shape things, to shape the audience experience. And I don't think that people will ever get fed up of traditional film. I'll be very, very surprised if that ever happens. However, I do think that people are really keen for a new experience, because of course, when you think about the way that we develop, we evolve. Children are playing with screens by the age of 2. They know them inside out. Even all the new ways of reading a book. It's just bizarre, isn't it? Where you've got AR coming out of a child's iPad. A book. You've got pop-up books coming out of a child's screen. So by the time you get to 15, after dealing with that since you were 2, would you be comfortable with just traditional settings? I mean, it might just be like enough of that lean back experience, let's have a watch of this. Because I'm just thinking, I wonder if my grandkids will appreciate Cinema Paradiso. I wonder. I wonder if
they will.
though. I bloody hope so, but it's probably only because I'm their nan.
No, I agree.
Has everyone seen Malcolm and Marie, or anyone seen Malcolm and Marie?
Absolutely.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing. It was made in lockdown, black and white film, two-hander, plays like a theatre play. I watched it on Saturday night. I was blown away by it.
What's it on?
Netflix.
Oh, I'll have a watch of that.
It's amazing. It's just such an achievement. And it's the dialogue is so consistently brilliant, and the acting is so consistently brilliant, and it's sort of, I'd never think that you could actually pull a film off that well that was just driven by dialogue, because it's just it's brilliant. Sorry, that went on. Just
what's it called again?
Malcolm and Marie.
Zendaya.
And it's about it's about filmmaking as well.
Yeah, I'll watch that.
About telling stories and being an artist and in a relationship. Yeah.
Daisy's just made a really interesting point there, but really good point actually, because of course Daisy's proof of concept is aimed at children, and children's films are really that again huge part of the market. Daisy, I just think you're onto a real winner with your suggestion, and I can't wait to see your proof of concept.
Yeah, I've got my nephews with me right now, so that's why I like my camera and mics off, because they're running around. I've got their iPads right now, which is the funny thing about it. And that's why it kind of ties in, and just hearing about the nostalgia. And I got out my old DS and handed it to one of my little nephews, and he was like so besotted with it, because he's like, it's a screen, but looking at all the graphics on it, he was like, he didn't understand. So to kind of use Screenlife in a way they're used to, in the interesting bright colours, the way I never grew up with it, it's a good way to kind of teach them traditional film, and to let them explore it and enjoy it more. Kind of like when the whole like Leapfrog education series that I grew up with, and you could like have the book and you tap on with the pen and it would tell you the story. This would kind of be like on screen, and you tap it and it tells you the story, like the history of film and things like that. I just think it's such a good market to go into.
Yeah, I agree. I think you've got something dead special there with that pitch. I really do. And again, over like I said, I've said this a number of times, it doesn't stop on the 31st, on the 29th of March. The 29th of March in my eyes is the beginning of something else. So the course as it stands will end. However, the beginning of the next step will start, and that's just about making sure that whatever it is that we're getting made actually, you know, the proof of concepts that are on the table are taken to a point where where we can do something with them. So that one in particular, I think, Daisy's just really, really exciting.
I'd like to find out about Karen's music video at
I
Knowsley. Then we kind of scuttled over the chat. What music video at Knowsley Hall?
Come on, Karen, where are you? Tell us what you've been doing.
I'll share the link. Maybe it's on YouTube. We just a friend of mine posted that they were looking for an actress, and I just went for it and I got it, and we ended up that my son was in it as well, and he totally stole the show. But yeah, it was good. It was a good laugh. Yeah.
You got to post the link now. We're gonna have a watch that. As we play out tonight, we'll watch a music video.
I'll see if I can find it. Maybe.
I must say, Judas and the Black Messiah. I don't know when it's coming out, but that is unbelievable. That, and I Care. I think it's coming on Netflix. And I Care a Lot. Unbelievable films. There's some great ones coming out this month. News of the World. Yeah, some great films being released at the moment.
I watched News.
Yeah, I saw that the weekend. It's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
Classic filmmaking. Two people want something. Gets just like dead simple but effective.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Are we doing breakout rooms now, or are we going into?
No, I think we're going to have a break now, aren't we? And then coming back.
Let's have a pause. Let's have a pause. Go and have a cup of tea, and we'll come back. What, past?
Yeah. What's the plan for this afternoon? Well, this afternoon. What's the plan for when we come back? Are you going to do a bit on editing, Martin?
I'll do a little bit about montage. It didn't take us very long. A little bit about editing, and then we can do some breakout rooms. And then if we need to, we can just stop a little bit early this week because we're going to have a thing on Saturday as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good call. Okay, all right. See you past.
Yeah, see you past.